David, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute after the show.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Me too. So before we get into your good work, I want to know, you know, we're on the 5 year anniversary. I know it's hard to think of this pandemic. And we 5 years ago were trying to figure it out. At this point, we're really like like spring break's over. What are we doing?
Right.
Is it going to keep going? So ultimately living through a pandemic, how much of that has reverberated into what you do today in 2025?
I think it's foundational on almost every aspect. I mean, first of all, let's just talk about being a parent of children who were students during the pandemic, one in college, one in early high school, and how it completely changed their lives fundamental. And as a primary focus of my life as their parent, just understanding that the rules were going to change, the ways that we needed to support them, what it looked like, just the difference between even the college entry experience between my older child and the younger, what how universities were having to adapt to the basically gap in education that had happened. So that whole being able to focus on that generation and those folks, I mean, it continues to reverberate even as I teach them new things or help them understand what they didn't learn because they were in their house for a year during that period of time, etc. For me personally, what I just see so much is people really striving both consciously and unconsciously to get back to a place where they're interacting with people again and learning how to do that and why it's important. You know, I just hear so many stories, hello, Kat, and experience so many moments in which, you know, people are surprised at how important it is to make that connection. They're amazed that relationships are important. They're sometimes confounded in the workplace about why networks are so vital to success and to a career and be able to think things long term. And I think that, we kind of my recollection, Joe, and I don't know if this was yours, was there was a few moments in the pandemic where we all said, "Oh, it's all going to be so different now." And I think what we're learning 5 years out is, yeah, there's a lot of things that we took on board, technology, the way we're meeting right now,
Yeah.
different ways to connect. And I think a lot of people are learning they didn't need it to be that different when it came to interpersonal and interhuman connection and the way we actually work with each other.
That's so refreshing you said that because I totally agree. I think there's foundational elements as the way human beings intermingle with each other that hasn't changed. But I think I was interviewing a drummer from that was living in Germany that had that perspective of being in Europe, but he was originally, I think, from Seattle. And he was like, America was like a car teetering on the edge. We were already in this precarious situation before the pandemic. And then we had George Floyd. Then we had kind of this class war. It's like America is like the young kid on the block. We can't just have a raging fire. We have to throw aerosol cans into it. We have to make it as intense and dramatic as possible. And I
Yeah.
think what you're saying to your point is that a lot of things that we should have already fixed prior to a global pandemic is what we need to focus on now that we come out of it.
I think that's absolutely true. And certainly that's what's happening with us geopolitically right now is this sense of, it can only be one way or the other. It has to be this or that. It has to be, there has to be one single solution for all people. You know, there was a period of time seemingly pre-pandemic, although maybe that's too easy a way to say it, in which there was a lot of sway and acceptance and an understanding that we were all doing a lot of different things in a whole bunch of different ways. And
Yeah.
it's an odd result to me from this sort of unity that came from the pandemic is that it wasn't one unity. It was almost factionality that came out of the pandemic, which was,
Yeah.
oh, now that I've found my people, I
Yeah.
need to make sure my people get their way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really frustrating component and how I'd have to think through how pandemic based that is, but it sure seems like since that time, uh, we threw some fuel on the fire and everybody sort of scattered to their corners, and that's a shame. I think we
Yeah.
all come together to put those fires out.
And I think a lot of these revelations aren't going to really sink in until later on. I think we're still, to a certain degree, close enough to it. I mean, we're moving farther away, and 2020 is going to start happening, but we're still too close. And by the way, for some reason, whenever I get on these calls, I'm a cat guy. The
Yeah,
cats just know me. They're
yeah,
ready to come in and be a part of the
totally. Yeah,
conversation.
that's just the thing. They're like, oh, you're talking to somebody, I want to talk to them
Let's
too.
go.
So yeah.
Curiosity always
Oh,
kills the cat.
absolutely. Yeah, she's amazing. And if I try to lock her out, then she just pounds on the door. It's worse.
They
So,
find a way. They
yeah,
find
for
a way. We're
sure.
like a
Yeah.
couple of mice they're going to play with. So let's get into the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis here in
Okay.
2025. To do that, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids, sixth graders, career day. The kid in the
Okay.
back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?"
Right.
What's your answer?
Okay. What do I do for a living? Well, I do a couple of things really well, and some of it I do for on behalf of other people, and some of it I do on behalf of my own stuff.
It's
So, what I do is I facilitate, which means I'm a teacher of a sort, kind of like your teacher in sixth grade. And I go into corporations and I help people learn how to be better leaders or work with other folks better or teach a class better. I'm a facilitator who teaches facilitation. So I'm a teacher who teaches teaching, so to speak. And so my goal all the time is to help the audience, you all, know or learn or have what I call the aha moment, which is that thing like, oh, I didn't know that before. And not just, oh, that's cool to know the moon is so far away, blah, 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 but like, oh, I didn't know that I could do that. I didn't know that I had that within me. I didn't know that I could be that person. I didn't know that I could accomplish that thing that I want to do. I didn't know how to sort through, a difficult situation or interacting with other people. And so the things that I teach, I try to be really practical for day-to-day basis. And then I try to say, okay, and what also are you here to do in the world? What's your purpose? What's your meaning? What's your bigger calling? And then, depending whether it's a class or sometimes one-on-one or however we work together, and I help people find ways to make that happen for themselves too. So I guess I teach people to understand how awesome they are, and then I teach them how their awesomeness makes a difference in the world.
So let me ask you this. I'm 52. I worked in corporate America in my 20s. And I
Yeah.
remember being in that environment kind of, prior, like when Office Space was around and before the office and all of that. And I'm curious, when I was in that environment, I don't ever remember people like you coming in, consultants coming in and helping the leaders and CEOs and upper brass figure out how to be better with people. So this is my question. It seems like coaching and all these avenues of refining who you are have become more of a thing in company and corporate culture. Is this because we've woken up to the idea that things move so fast we need other people to come in and look at us because we're in the peanut butter jar and don't see the label anymore? How did this happen?
Yeah, I think I think there are a couple of different causes of it. I mean, one of the internal struggles in business, especially from HR people, is trying to get the business side people to see the return on investment, the ROI.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that had happened is that a lot of the research and the analytics became much more clear on if you help your people be this way, or if you treat them with certain levels of respect or inclusion and all of the different things that we value, then you'll actually see a return on your investment, on your bottom line, on your retention, on your ability to get the most out of them, on all of these different things. And so part of what happened was there just became a much more clear connection between the two. And so as educators, as business leaders went through an educational system that was including those things, then they became leaders who said, oh, by the way, we need to do all of these things too.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that happened, and going back to a little bit of our discussion about the pandemic, but even slightly before, is that as primary school education changed, and in America really went through a bit of a turn towards being more rote and more facts based. And in the state of Indiana, there's a Core 40 program, and so it's much more just academically focused. That people were finding that in the workplace they were having some highly educated folks that were also not necessarily socially as educated as they had been in the past. And the college experience changed for some people. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that completely changed the way people were being socialized. So now you have people who you've brought in. I mean, a good leader creates a diverse team of experience, of history, of education, of knowledge, of skill. And you need those folks to work together. And you find out, oh, gee, there wasn't a class in college of how to do communal work, how to reach a compromise, how to hold a meeting, all those things that we assume. When I was 23 and showed up, there was a meeting, you went, and that was it. Well, now if we now meetings are a disaster. And so we need to step back and say, but what's an effective meeting and why am I having a meeting? And the old, could this meeting have been an email sort of thing?
Yeah,
So I think, just an ability of executives to say, especially as we became good at manufacturing and marketing and rest. Okay, how do we continue to increase growth? What else can we look at? I think that's where we got to as well. Let's look at how we're treating our people. Are we getting the most and the best we can out of them, especially if they're, there's obvious red flags like they're leaving every 6 months or, whatever. So
yeah,
uh, I think that's kind of how we got here.
that makes sense. So let's go back to when you were in grade school. What did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream life?
Well, that was a struggle. In grade, my third grade essay was that I wanted to be a dentist, but that was clearly a lie. I just must have pulled that out of the ether because I had to get the assignment done.
Yeah,
When I was a young adult, everyone told me that I should be an attorney because they saw what attorneys were on TV, which was the ability to stand and orate and move and do all those sorts of things, and I have that gift. But then I found out what attorneys really do, and I was like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to be in school that long to sit behind a desk and squibble.
yeah,
Uh, and then there was absolutely a flash in the pan of performing arts, and I actually have a fine arts degree. I mean, I went into film and television production
yeah.
because I loved the management of it, but also the creative side. But shortly after I graduated with that BFA, I returned to what I'd really been doing and what truly was my love, which was just human development.
Yeah.
As a student and a young person, I did it as in leadership development workshops and camps, and I was traveling and speaking to student groups and full-on convocations at schools. And so that obviously helped my performing bug, but it also allowed me to infuse, yeah, but this is what I believe and what I think is important, and got me back to that kind of how I described at the beginning. This is why I know you're awesome, and this is why the world needs your awesomeness.
So where were you born and raised, and what were these foundational seeds, whether it was parenting or your environment, that imbued you with the arts and then with leading and helping people get to a better place?
Well, yeah, and let's be super clear. I mean, born and raised, I was born Midwest. I was raised in Indiana, Indianapolis, in an upper middle class blended home with a physician as a father. I come from a place of privilege, and I think it's important to just put that out there.
Right.
That allowed me an education that was well-rounded, where I wasn't struggling each day to meet basic necessities and opportunities to explore the things I wanted to explore. So early on, I was very much a helper. I was the youngest of six kids. And so, well, while sports were the thing, I wasn't athletic, but I was really good at being the team manager and managing the equipment and the travel and the statistics and all of that. And I found a real joy in being sort of the behind the scenes assistant and being the coach's right-hand man as opposed to the quarterback's right-hand man. Um, and then in high school, I was introduced to a program called Teen Institute, which still exists in some states. It was in 20 some odd states at the time. And it was a leadership development camp. I mean, I basically tell folks that I was a leadership geek. Other kids went to soccer camp or cheerleading camp or whatever. I went to leadership camp.
Yeah.
And I ended up going 4 years in a row to this program, which was in Indiana at the time and also a whole bunch of other states. And then, like my senior year in high school, I went to like three. One was sponsored by Indiana University, one was Teen Institute, one was a Red Cross camp. So I found the great joy in those camps, which were absolutely about both self-discovery and empowerment in groups and learning the social aspects of supporting other people and being with other people. So then I went off to Be Rich and Famous, film director. That's what I was going to do, and then was immediately called back to the same really heart space, which was okay. How can I get back to really connecting with people? And so since then, almost entirely independently, I've created business and had a life of just wanting to be in that place. And I found a nice corporate niche to do that with leadership, but I also have my own programs and my own development stuff that I do as well. And someday those will switch and I could do my thing full time and the corporate thing will be the icing.
So you're in a position of inspiring others. Who
Mhm.
has that inspiration been for you? Who has been that heroic force in your life?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Um, I think that what's most remarkable about it is I could say names, but they wouldn't be people you would know
Sure.
because it really comes down to those interpersonals, watching people overcome, um, um, and yeah, and I have folks who've overcome adversity or have come out of difficult circumstances to go to school and persevered, and it's so easy for us to settle down into that struggle of or that narrative that we like on TV, that overcoming hardship. But I'll tell you what, some of the most inspiring people to me are the ones who I have watched just sit down and envelop other people in their energy and make that other person the most important person in the room.
Yeah.
And there was a great leader, civic leader here in Indianapolis. His name was John Gibson, and I could watch him walk into a room from 100 to two people, and all of a sudden, everybody else was better than they were the moment before.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always words or responses. What I came to understand was how much it was just energy, and just walking into a room with a sense of I mean, let's just say it, of just unconditional love and acceptance, and recognizing that the most skeptical person might be the last one to do it, but everyone in that room was going to give in to the power of his um, really just truth
Yeah.
and sincerity.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to go into your filmmaker part of your brain.
Okay.
You could meet a director, a producer, a maker of film, and
hmm
hang out with them without the bright lights and just get a grasp of who they are.
hmm
Who would that be? Who would you love to have met? It could be a ghost, it could be someone alive, whatever director.
Is he still directing? I'll tell you, because this is a great question, and it's come, who would you invite to dinner? I gotta tell you, it really high on my list is Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Um, and in addition to the fact that he's directed film and he's been involved in film for so long, I mean, he's an author of fiction books. He's a very intelligent art historian. He started performing at the age of 16. He's done the grind. He peaked and he fell, and I mean, he's just a remarkable person.
Yeah.
And I have a sense that after I got all fanboy on him on some of the stuff, the work that I've seen, I want to know what he thinks about day to day
Yeah.
that isn't all of that. I just sense there's a real depth to him. So he would be very close on the list as far as who's top. Uh, I'm a huge admirer of Hitchcock, of course, and because he just loved the technicality of it all. He wasn't sentimental. He was really just looking to expand the form over and over and over again. And it's with everything that's being done artificially nowadays, be so great to go in and talk to him about all the things that he had to do, in physical form. So there's that. Writing wise, who's doing fascinating? Well, I would love to sit down with, and her name is escaping me right now, and I'm embarrassed, but the Barbie movie was one of the most brilliant films I've ever
Ooh.
seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of it is how many different layers. If you're a film buff at all, you see that film in a completely different way than someone who is merely there for the summer block, popcorn thing. And Greta Gerwig is her name, and uh, I want to break down the decision making that she did for that film because there are some nuances to it that I won't go into now. This isn't a film discussion,
Yeah.
but just stunning and just so smart.
Yeah. So you have to deal with when you go into company corporate environments, it can be heavy stuff that you're dealing with and it can be serious. So let me ask you this. If you walked into a room of all of the clients that you've had over the years, you swim through that room and go to a podium and you can tell them one fun thing, one fun story, one thing that would kind of humanize you in a different way to that room, what would you tell them? Maybe a first concert, maybe something cool like that, something along those lines.
Something for me? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
see, it's so interesting when you ask that question because the first thing I think is, well, what's the go-to thing that I would teach them for them?
Uh-huh.
And you've asked a different question, and now I have to pause and think about that. Like, wait, something about me?
Right.
Um, yeah, it is it's wow, yeah, no kidding. Like, what's a fun story that I could tell? Uh
Here, let's segue. Let's segue out of
Yeah.
it. Let me kind of
Yeah.
switch gears and ask you this to get kind of on that nostalgic route. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've gained,
Hmm.
what advice would you impart?
Um, I think that the thing that I left behind because that I wouldn't have at the age of 18 was to know that um, your circumstances matter.
Yeah,
You know, maybe it's a Midwestern thing, but now that I'm older, nearly 55, and I've lived in the Midwest most of my life, and I've this is very personal, so I don't know how everybody else is going to take this, but I want to be really sincere.
sure.
I found myself extremely frustrated with the platitudes of, bloom where you're planted. And, if you can't be happy there, then where are you going to be happy? And, you're you wherever you go, so you better be happy wherever you are. All of which is true,
Yeah,
but which I found really just discounted the fact that, no, actually, there are places for you that are nurturing, that are growing, that are stimulating. Don't deny where you're happy.
yeah,
Don't deny where the energy comes from. I would go on vacation and feel fantastic and say, "Wow, you'd love to live here," and then you go back to wherever you're from, and in the end, it's sort of like, why would you go back?
yeah,
Why would you go back? And if a circumstance is helping you be your best you, then be willing to say some of it is about this place or that person or this opportunity or that vista or this sunset or this energy or this temperature or this ability to step out onto a ski slope or this willingness, to have a museum next door. Whatever that is, I think that there's some sense that, I'll bring whoever I am and create magic. Okay. Yeah, I
yeah.
will. And if it's a place that's open to my magic, it's going to go a lot better than somewhere where I'm fighting to pull the curtain open and see if anybody's behind it.
Very well said. So, of all of these things, speaking of the journey and where you are and where you're at, of everything that you've done in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Uh, I don't know if this is the answer you're expecting. I was a substitute teacher in high school for a while, and it was great. And I went to one high school over and over, so I got to know the kids and the whole thing. And one Monday I showed up, and things were off, really off. And the kids that I knew were yelling at me across the parking lot, "Hey, did you hear?" Blah, blah, blah. So I go in and I get my assignment for the day, and it turns out that I'm going to be replacing that day a teacher, a beloved English teacher who had been let go on the Friday before. And all I can say about that is no one knew why, but clearly something dramatic had happened because this teacher had been wiped off the face of the earth. No one had seen her for 3 days. She was off social media. She couldn't, the whole thing. It was a full intervention. And the other thing to say is nobody wanted that to happen. She was an outstanding teacher. Her students loved her. She would idea who you want in the classroom for your kid, etc. So something happened. Doesn't matter. I walk into the, and I'm going to be the replacement for that day. Walk into the room, students are bustling, there's rumors flying, everybody's upset. I'm told the administration will come in and, they're going to talk about what happened. And so, of course, these three stern people come in and say, of course, I can't tell you anything that would happen, but just know that your education is secure and we're going to take care of you. And, don't worry about it. Whatever. They give the standard.
Yeah,
Counselors are here if you need anything. And they file out. I've got a lesson plan in my hand that I put down on the table, pull up a desk, sit on it, and say, "What the hell was that?" And I look at these students in the eye and I say, "What is going on?" And then I facilitated 35 minutes of just helping these kids heal and grieve and feel their feelings and know what they needed to say and help them understand why grief without knowing is even more difficult. And now kids are crying and people are settling down and they're expressing what they're really afraid of and why they're concerned. And one kid says to me, look, I never understood English until I had this teacher and I don't know what I'm going to do, and all of a sudden it's all out on the table. And I was in service of those kids
Yeah.
for and I did that for 4 periods in a row. And then I did it for 3 days after that.
Wow.
I'm the most proud of my ability to walk into a situation, recognize what people are experiencing at the time, and provide for them what they need. And
Yeah.
whether or not that's a lesson plan or it's just an adult who actually cares, or a person who actually cares, or a peer who's willing to open the door or help them across the street or whatever, that's what I'm most proud of. And in that moment, and that's the best I've ever done it.
That's a wonderful story. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's
Yeah.
your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a guy who's struggling, who's trying every day to understand how the rest of the universe is going to respond to what I'm bringing. I'm overcoming a previous notion that if I could be what the rest of the world wanted, then they would provide for me what I wanted. And I'm becoming the person who's going to be who I am and then see how the world is going to respond. And it is, frankly, a frightening, uh, daunting, extraordinary, exciting, wonderful, delightful place to be. It's the most authentic I can be. And in spite of the fact that I am suffering anxiety and waking up with racing thoughts and taking big, giant, bold steps one day and then shivering the next, it feels a lot like being alive. And I'll take that over what I did for many years, which was not being alive and hiding and wondering why I'm not rising to the expectations of others or the universe or whatever else was out there. And doing that for too long took me to a really dark place. And I really struggled and eventually had to pull myself out of that with a lot of help and a lot of figuring out. But in charge right now is the authentic me. I'm putting me out there, and it feels really great.
And it's great, man. Let me ask you this. If anyone wants to reach out, they want to hire you, any of the good work that you're doing in your life, where can they go?
Right. So they can go to davidallenbrown.com. The tricky part is the middle name, ALAN, davidallenbrown.com. They'll find out about my facilitation work there. They'll find out that I'm a writer there, and they'll dive into Convergence, which is the new program that I've published, which is how I manage being my authentic self day to day. And that's it's a self-regulation program, helps people recognize and regulate their inner voices and recognize their awesomeness and then how that awesomeness plays out in the world. So Instagram is the author David Allen Brown, and you can DM me there. In fact, if you follow me and DM me there, I'll give you a discount to the online program as well. But we can talk about all that. Yeah, reach out. I'd love to talk about everything from theater to film to how awesome you are and how awesome your company can be. So it'll be great.
This has been awesome. David, thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for opening up. It's been wonderful. Great to meet you, man.
Thanks, Joe.
Best of luck. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.